All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about landscapes, and let me go ahead and get my lights up. By the way, if you ever want to do this, it's Control L. Make sure you click on this screen first, and you're going to be able to adjust the angle of the sun. You can see that. You can see it on the horizon. And I'm going to go ahead and switch my mode here at the very top of the screen to landscape, which I can also do with Shift 2. And I'm going to choose grass as the material. And then for the size, the default should be fine. You can see that the smaller I go, the bigger I go. I'm going to go ahead and just keep it as it is. That's a perfectly good size for what we're going to be doing. And yeah, you can also change like the number, how far out it goes and everything like that, but I think the default is going to be just fine for our purposes. So let's go ahead and click, let's make sure that it also is slowing my speed down here. I'm going to make sure that it's below this platform, ideally just a little bit below. If it's moving too fast, you can turn your snaps off. Okay, creating. It's going to take a second for it to render and everything, but I think we're good here. So let me go ahead and delete these lights that I put on the level. Oh, I got to go back into selection mode whenever I want to do stuff like that. That's a good point to know. Back to landscape. When you go into landscape mode, make sure you select your landscape first. Otherwise, it may not know which landscape if you have more than one. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is add some mountains into the background, and I'm going to do that. First, let me just kind of explain how this all works. You got the sculpt tool, which you can do that, which is a perfectly fine way to make mountains if you are so inclined, but I'll show you a couple other ways. If you hold down Shift, it goes the opposite direction. And you can see that this goes pretty quickly. You can change your tool strength. You can pull it way down so that you can see that now it's going to happen a lot slower. And you can even change the size of the brush so I can get really, really big. And obviously I can go the other direction and go really, really small if I was so inclined. So turning your tool strength all the way up and going really, really small, you're probably going to get some pretty weird stuff happening, so just be aware of those things. The fall off is how far the softness of the brush is. So you can see that if I do this right now, it's kind of coming up in a plateau. If I set the softness to 0, it goes straight up. You get these weird like tiling things. You don't really want that. There are ways to fix that, but you can see that if I go all the way up, it's going to be a much, much more round. So I think the default is 50, and you can always go back to default by just clicking here. There is, let's talk about noise next. So let's say that I create a whole bunch of noise. This kind of thing occurs. Looks very spiky. Well, I can always come in with smooth and smooth it up. So if I wanted to create a hill, that might be a cool way to do it so that it's kind of organic looking. And you can even leave some of those rocky outcroppings on one side, which looks kind of neat. Actually, I should probably do that more in the front because oops. How do I do redo? Oh, Control Y, that's right. So I can just kind of do something like that, and that gives us some pretty nice organic looking mountains. And if it happens too fast, I'm just clicking right now, I'm not dragging. You can always just, again, turn your tool strength down. So let's say that I wanted to be able to get to the top of this mountain. One thing you can do is you can use a ramp. So I'm going to click at the bottom, and I want an easy way to get up there, so I don't want it to be too steep. And then I'll go ahead and do that. And you can change the width of the ramp as well as the side fall off. So if you do it like this, it's going to be like really flat edges. But if I pull the side fall off to this, it's going to be very round like that. So to make it more organic looking, I'm going to just give it a little bit of that, and then when you're done, you just click on, and you can always move these as well. You click enter, and go. So now I have a way to get there, and maybe I wanted to also have a way to get up here. So I'll click on that one to move it, and then I can click somewhere else. So if I click on this one, I can move it here or here, and if I click on this one, I can move it here or here. So I'll just go ahead and make it so that you have another ramp right there. I don't want the sides to be quite as long on this. Now I hit enter. Oops, I have to click here first. Enter, and then now I have an easy way to navigate up my mountain. Maybe I want a little flat area here, so I can go into my flatten tool, and let's make this nice and small. And I want the strength to be really low. I want this to be nice and subtle, but I'm just gonna do a little bit of that kind of work to kind of give the player a little path that's a little bit more organic looking. And when you flatten, wherever you start, that's what's gonna, everywhere you draw, it's gonna put everything to that level. So if I started here, you can see it's gonna go to that level. So yeah, it's just some things that you're gonna have to kind of play with. And then maybe I wanna come in and like smooth it out a little bit, just to make sure that it's not too steep anywhere, and there's a nice clear path for the player to know where to go. And then they can make it on top of the mountain. If you ever want to test out if this works, you can always go back to selection mode, right click, and go play from here. And now your character will start at the mountain instead of where they start by default. And we can see, is this a good way to get up the mountain? And yes, it is. Here I stand. Another tool, let me go back to landscape mode. I'm going to select this, go to landscape, and then I'm going to go into the noise tool. The noise tool is a really good tool. By default, let me set these back to the defaults. It's going to do this, which is good for making some terrain that's a little bit, not super flat and not as boring. I'm going to set it so that you can either do subtract, which means it's only going to go down. It's going down fast. Add means it's only going to go up, or both, which means it'll push and pull at the same time. Bringing my tool strength way down to like 0.05. The scale is important to understand. Actually, let me pull the scale up, the strength up for a minute so you can see. The scale is going to be when the randomness, how big it's going to be. So right now it's really, really big. Look, watch what happens when I set it down to the lowest amount. So now we get these crazy little spikes, right? So obviously neither of those are going to be the best thing, but for now I'm going to keep the noise scale high. I'm going to make my brush as big as I can. Oops, and I have to set I don't know why the tool strength goes crazy on this one, but to 0.05, and I'm just going to set some kind of foothills around the area. And then I'm going to pull my noise scale down. Keep doing this. And I'm making my brush a little bit smaller. And I'm going to start kind of doing like the peaks. And then I'm going to come in with the noise scale even lower and kind of get some rocky areas. To give you some nice organic looking, rocky, looking mountains. And if you feel like, they're too kind of pushed together and you want to break them apart a little bit, you can always go to subtract mode and maybe pull some areas down. And at the very, very top, maybe I'll even pull the noise scale even lower. And let's go add, maybe I'll even do a little bit of both so I can give it some push and pull. just to give it some more randomness and spikes. This is just an aesthetic choice here at this point. You can do whatever works for you. I think the strength needs to go up a little bit. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Pretty cool. We have some like little hills that you can kind of navigate around. Maybe on the ground, I want to put a little bit of, I'm going to set this to 0.01, very, very low. And I'm going to set it to both, and I'm going to set the noise scale to be pretty high. Brush size really, really big, and I'm just going to come in and just do a little bit so that when you're walking, it's not going to feel perfectly flat. And it's a little hard to see what I'm doing here, but it's just doing some slight pushing and pulling to kind of deform the scenery. I don't know why there's a sharp edge right there, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. And there we go. Let's see how this feels when I hit play. Feels nice and organic. It's not perfectly flat. Kind of comes up in some areas. And then finally, the last thing is erosion. We can throw in a little bit of erosion to kind of make it look like it's been eroded by time, and that'll kind of help flatten it out a little bit and kind of smooth out some areas. Sometimes erosion does not do what you want it to do. You can also try hydro erosion, and again, this can sometimes have some funky effects, but sometimes it does some cool things and kind of shows like what would happen if there was water kind of pouring through this area. Maybe make some little natural crevices like that. I don't really want that. I mean, you could put like a stream in there, but so I'm gonna go to smooth and just kind of smooth out some of these areas. Anywhere it just feels a little off, kind of peculiar. Maybe I'll even flatten some areas. There we go. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a lake as well. So to do that, I'm going to go into the sculpt tool, and let's put our lake here. And I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. And I'm going to hold down Shift. Let's bring the tool strength up. Do something like that. And then I'm going to use the flatten tool to take a little section here. And actually, I want the brush fall off to be almost nothing now, so it's very soft and gradual. And let's see how deep that is. That's pretty deep. So let me pull from here. Make my brush smaller. And let's make the bottom of our lake maybe like that high instead. The tool strength's too low. I'm just pulling from the edge here so I can kind of get a nice bottom. And then I'll pull the size up a little bit and continue that around the edges. You're not going to be able to see the bottom of your lake in this instance. You can have transparent water, but in this case we're not going to. So that's a nice little lake. And maybe I want to flatten some areas on this edges here to make it a little bit more gradual. So I have a nice shore in some places. Okay, let's try this. Next thing I'm going to do is add another landscape. So I'm going to create a new landscape here. And this one I want to make it so that it just fits in that little lake area. I don't want it to be very big, so I'm going to go 7 by 7. And then if you don't want it to go up or down, you can grab it in between these two. It'll only move it on the X and Y axis. And that is not bad. You don't want to scale it. You don't want to make it like bigger like that. Instead, just add more sections if you need them. So let's just say 9 by 9. Let's say 10, 12. For mine, I'm going to need about 12 by 12. And just make sure that all the edges are, you don't want like a hard edge on your lake. Maybe need to go a little wider. Let's go 14. Okay. That should work. And I'm going to set the material to water. Go ahead and use lake and create. Let's hit play and see how this looks. Okay, we have a lake. And right now you're just going to walk on top of it. I'm not going to make any religious jokes there, but we have a landscape.